Okay, so yeah, I think Sharon's talk previously has just set up a lot of things that I'm going to cover as well. So that's done this talk a bit of a favor because I'm going to be talking about our development and evaluation of induction resources for first year students at the University of Glasgow. So this is a project that is still very much ongoing, involves lots of different people making resources, but in particular, I've been working with Mary on really evaluating how students are receiving their induction as they come into level one life sciences, and how we can use their expectations and the feedback they give us to develop the induction process. So coming to university, I don't think I need to dwell on this too much, but there's a lot for students to think about making that transition into higher education, and that can sort of be thought of on a couple of different levels. So they have the academic considerations, so that change quite often from high school, not always, but to lectures, to labs, getting used to the buildings and the campus, the online learning environment, or the VLE, we use Moodle, but also some more personal aspects as well. So things like living independently, balancing part-time work, as we've just heard, meeting new people, admin, visa, accommodation. So there's a lot going on, and the role of induction should really be to support students in that transition process. So help them make that move into university. And the importance of induction has been written about loads. I've added one paper here that's particularly nice, talking about first year undergraduate induction and how it's important for attainment. But really, overall, successful induction is just about preparing students for life at university and setting them up for academic success. And there is one study that particularly highlighted this importance, because it showed that students who are successful at the end of their first year are more likely to be awarded higher degree classifications at the end of their degree. And this was regardless of their entry qualification coming in. So it's just to really emphasize sort of that importance of the induction process and that setting up experience that they get into first year of university. And again, covering what the previous talks have as well about COVID and the impact of that whole experience on not only people's lives, obviously, but university and education as well. And I think most of the time when we talk about our experiences in learning and teaching, we do have distinct pre-COVID and sort of quote unquote post-COVID marker point. So it's always, this was the way things were done sort of pre-COVID, this is how they were done in that middle lockdown period, and this is how we do things now. And there really have been lots of changes in across education, but specifically related to the use of technology. And a lot of that was done due to necessity, obviously, and they were framed as these emergency pivots. They were pivots to a new way of teaching or a new way of running a course. And they were temporary and not necessarily the best way to do things. But I think there are opportunities here to revisit resources. So sort of the pre-COVID way of doing things, and then the way we transitioned to cope with lockdown, and think about what positives can we take? How has this affected student experiences and expectations when they come to university? And that's the lens that we've tried to look through our induction resources with. So the real aim is to develop induction resources and activities for our first year life sciences students that support them in their transition, and evaluate any developments we make through student feedback, and then cyclically go through that process. So we're getting feedback, we're developing, getting feedback and developing. And for that reason, I don't really see this project having an end point as such. I think it's something that needs to continue being developed as universities develop and as student expectations change, maybe year on year. So first year cohorts are often very large, and Mary was just mentioning a few moments ago that we do have particularly large cohorts in our biology courses, and there's approximately sort of 500 to 600 students that come in to enroll in a life sciences degree at the University of Glasgow. And students have diverse backgrounds, so different nationalities, educational experiences, life experiences, but also different interests and different degree paths as well. So there are 16 life sciences degrees across 6 different schools, covering things from molecular biology to ecology and anatomy and all sorts of things. So lots of different students coming in, lots of different expectations, lots of different backgrounds. And the induction really has to be something that all of these students can benefit from. So students have access to induction resources before starting their courses. And one of the resources that they have access to is this induction Moodle page that's been created. And I put we here. I feel that that's big use of we. I contributed some resources to this. It was a big team. So, anyone involved in that initial transition period were asked to contribute some information that they would like first year students coming in to know. So we set up this Moodle page. Moodle is the VLE used at Glasgow. So it's a good opportunity, as well as housing information. It's a good opportunity for students to get familiar with the technology that they're going to be using throughout their degree as well. So the idea was to consolidate important information into one place, and the induction site then just gets updated and refined year on year. So the key resources on this induction Moodle, so I've just pulled out some specific things. I didn't want to go through it all, but we have guidance on how to use Moodle, how to use My Glasgow, and Teams. So just the technology that they're expected to be familiar with. Some registration and enrollment information, some pre-recorded videos, meet the staff. So we had staff record themselves, just a bit of an introduction, say who they are, what they do, and I think a fun fact about themselves as well, if they wanted, and an interactive lab tour video. So this was, it's very, I feel it's very rough and ready at the moment, but it's essentially a Kaltura media tool that you can use to record clips and stitch them together in a way that students can almost choose their own adventure. So they can click on an option and be guided around the lab. And these two specifically were something that I developed in response to this rise in reports of student anxieties that were related to being on campus. So after restrictions, or sort of at the time when we can have some on-campus activities, but not quite back to normal, we had reports of students feeling so anxious that they couldn't quite bring themselves to be on campus, or they'd get to campus but couldn't bring themselves to come into the lab. They were just very nervous about transitioning back to on-campus teaching. And we wondered what resources might be useful. So talking to colleagues in other schools and also in the literature, we saw that having an experience of seeing staff and seeing environments before coming onto campus and actually experiencing them might be worthwhile and relieve anxiety. So we did that. And I'll talk a bit more about the student response to that when I look at the survey outcomes. But we also had some information on there, just general about academic studies, and also some assessment information just in general about their courses too. Their induction lectures for life sciences. So they get an overview of the course, and courses they'll be taking throughout their degree. We also had Meet the Staff events as well. So these were on-person Meet the Staff as opposed to the videos that are on Moodle, where students could drop in that initial Freshers Week period and meet the teaching team involved in level 1 teaching, but also some staff specific to degree groups as well. And I'll say a bit more about that in a moment. So we wanted to get feedback on all aspects of the life sciences induction to see what was working and what wasn't. So we took a very classic two-pronged approach to that, an online survey and some focus groups. So we had a mix of closed and open questions, all anonymous, but we would also invite all students to participate in focus groups. And of course, those were varied group sizes, but we did get some interest and feedback from those. And we really wanted to see what works at the moment and what needs to be improved. And just to give you an overview of who actually responded to our survey as well. So I mentioned we have very large cohorts, very diverse cohorts. We have 98 students that completed a feedback survey. 76 of those were from the UK, 22 were international students. I wanted to look at potential differences in experience between the UK and international students because, I mean, you can compare and contrast lots of different groups if you wanted to group people. But it's particularly apparent the challenges are different between these two groups when transitioning to higher education in the UK. So I just wanted to see if there is a clear difference in experiences between these two groups of students and just ensure that we can then work to provide appropriate levels of support. It's worth saying as well that this distribution in survey response roughly reflects the cohort demographic as well, because we do have a lot more UK students than international students coming into life sciences. So a very broad overview question that we asked in the survey was if they had to rate the induction activities, so the presentation and the Moodle, what rating would they give it? And 80% or over 80% of those responses fit into the excellent or good category. So it's almost like pat on the back, excellent. But obviously this is very broad and we wanted to get a bit more nuance, but this was just to flag up anything, anything particularly alarming. But thankfully, overall, it seemed like it was a good resource for students. And don't worry, there's a lot of information on that chart, but basically what I just wanted to highlight is that for every single question that was quantitative, so any question that was a closed response, I just wanted to see if there was a difference between how the UK and international students felt, and there was none. So at any point, any question, there was no significant difference in responses between UK and international students. But our focus group and open-ended questions allowed us to dig a bit deeper into that. So these were all of the closed questions that we asked students. So we provided them with statements and asked them whether they agree or disagree with the statements. And you'll see immediately that there is one that kind of sticks out like a sore thumb. And that was the point of doing an analysis like this. Very broad overview, what's working, what isn't. And types of questions we asked. So we wanted to know, are the expectations of the induction made clear? Did they enhance knowledge of things like location on campus, staff who are going to be involved in teaching, access to timetable, technology? And on the whole, students seem to agree that, that these expectations were met, that they did have enough information. One thing that they disagreed with on the whole was that induction activities gave them the opportunity to get to know other students on the course. So this became an area for improvement, and a bit of an action point was how can we provide more opportunities for students to get to know one another, because that's obviously an important part of the induction. They're coming onto a course, they want to meet other people on that course. And we have these Meet the Staff events now, so it ran at the beginning of this semester. And we invited staff from the different degree programs. So we have 16 degrees spread across 6 different schools in the life sciences. So there is a lot of diversity in teaching staff, especially as they progress through their degree. So the hope is that with these events, students won't just meet the staff on their degree, but by having degree programs, set for certain days in the week, they'll be able to meet students on those degrees as well. There is possibility that for that induction lecture, there might be more opportunities for students to interact there, but due to large numbers of students and also the feedback that we've had about the information given in the induction lecture, this might not be the best route for change. So the open-ended questions that we asked, just to get a bit more specific detail about what's working and what's not, it's kind of like 2 stars and a wish, but we just asked for one good thing and one thing that could be improved, and 4 key themes came out from there. So structure and accessibility of the resources, the content, interaction opportunities, and then technology. And I'll just run through some quotes that encapsulate the feelings that students have in each of these themes. So for structure and accessibility, generally students felt things were well organized, presented in an order that was logical. And something that came up again and again, I should have maybe made that, font size 100, was the checklist. Students really liked that we had a checklist on Moodle that allowed them to tick through activities that needed to be completed. Some students reported that it was slightly difficult to look through the entire Moodle page, and it was unsure, if they'd missed something or not. Coming on to content, generally level of information, there was appropriate information about university work, about the lab space, about staff, but some students reported feeling a bit overloaded with things to do, and they had a lot of work, and it felt like the induction in itself was a course. Interaction opportunities, there were very few responses in this category, which probably stands to reason given that they felt they didn't really get many opportunities. So some students did say that they met staff and other students on their course, but generally they just wanted more of this. Technology, some students reported that they felt more confident with Moodle after going through the induction, but there was a request that maybe some videos on the different technologies would be helpful. So finally, we ran some focus groups, and we just ran these focus groups a couple of weeks ago. So I've not gone through it in thematic content analysis or anything in depth, but we had a discussion about the content of the focus groups and thought about what key things were coming up again and again. And I think students generally, something that didn't come through in the survey but that came through quite a bit in the focus group, was a lack of knowledge about what resources were on offer. So some students just weren't sure what the induction Moodle was, when they were supposed to use it, and sort of how it fit in with different courses. So they have different course inductions, they have their degree induction, they have the university induction, and it was just a bit of confusion about how it all comes together. Some resources came a little late. So things like registration and enrollment, they felt, what does it matter? I'm already enrolled. But one thing that was very interesting and forms part of our take-home messages really are that students really like videos, and they like short videos, less than 5 minutes, and they really enjoy accessing information via social media. So we found out that, or at least I found out, this was news to me, that the University of Glasgow Life Sciences has an Instagram page, and students really expected a lot of information to be on that Instagram page, and were quite confused that it wasn't used for disseminating information. So I think this is something that we'll definitely look into. It could potentially, it links up well with the fact that they like interactivity, they like videos, and it may help us overcome some of the communication problems for those students that weren't quite sure what resources were on offer. So those are just the broad take-home messages. I mean, I think I covered them during the talk, but really, I'm just going to thank you for listening now, and then reach out if anyone has any top tips for creating interesting videos or using social media, then I would love to hear them. So thank you.